In the vast halls of the Intergalactic Academy, where students from all corners of the universe gathered to learn and exchange ideas, young Jake walked into the school cafeteria one ordinary day, unaware that it would be a day he would remember for the rest of his life. The Intergalactic Academy was a grand place, a marvel of futuristic architecture that boasted towering ceilings adorned with holographic star maps, walls that shimmered in response to nearby movements, and tables that subtly adjusted to the needs and sizes of different species. From massive, lumbering figures with multiple limbs and scales to small, almost invisible creatures that shimmered like mist, the cafeteria was a living, breathing tapestry of life from every known corner of the universe. Jake was one of the few humans attending the academy. Humanity was a relatively recent addition to the interstellar community, having made their official debut only a century ago. As such, humans were still somewhat of an enigma, often underestimated or even regarded with mild curiosity. Jake, however, had learned to live with the occasional strange looks or the whispers that followed him down the halls. He was a naturally kind-hearted, resilient young man who prided himself on his empathy and openness to new experiences. Each day, he tried to learn as much as he could about the different species he encountered, finding beauty in the diversity around him. He scanned the cafeteria, his gaze wandering over groups of friends sitting together, chatting, laughing, and sharing meals that ranged from bubbling liquids to crystallized forms. The cafeteria was divided into sections based on the environmental needs of various species. There was the aquatic section, where tables floated on small pools of water, a gravity-neutral zone, where tables hovered and allowed certain species to eat while floating, and even a thermal section for those creatures whose body temperatures needed a warmer atmosphere to function correctly. Jake's section, being one of the most adaptable, had tables for carbon-based, oxygen-breathing beings. As he walked over to his usual spot, tray in hand, he spotted a figure sitting alone at a small table near the edge of the cafeteria, where the lights were dimmer and fewer people ventured. It was a young alien girl, her head bowed, fingers nervously fidgeting with the edges of her cafeteria tray. She was quite different from the other students, her skin a pale blue with a slight translucence, like a delicate veil over her inner glow. Her hair, if it could even be called that, looked more like a cascade of bioluminescent tendrils that faintly pulsed with soft, calming hues that shifted from blue to lavender. She looked fragile, almost ethereal, as if a gust of wind might blow her away. Jake was struck by the sadness in her posture, the way her shoulders hunched slightly forward, and how she stared at her empty tray with a longing expression. Curiosity mixed with empathy tugged at Jake's heart. He couldn't just ignore her. Taking a deep breath, he approached her table, hoping he wouldn't seem too forward. He knew that interactions with different species often required certain protocols, and he wasn't fully versed in the customs of her kind. But kindness, he believed, was a universal language. "Hey there," he said gently, trying to keep his tone friendly yet soft. The alien girl looked up, startled, her large eyes reflecting a swirl of colors, like galaxies trapped within them. She studied him, unsure at first, clearly not used to being approached by others. For a brief moment, Jake feared he might have crossed a line, intruded where he wasn't welcome. But then, her expression softened, and she gave him a shy nod, acknowledging his presence. "Mind if I sit here?" Jake gestured to the seat across from her. She hesitated, glancing around as if checking if anyone was watching, then nodded once more. Jake sat down, placing his tray in front of him. He noticed that her tray was almost completely empty, save for a small, gelatinous cube that didn't look particularly appetizing. It reminded him of the emergency rations his father, a scientist, had once brought home from an expedition, a tasteless, nutritional substance meant to sustain life rather than offer enjoyment. Jake's own tray was filled with an assortment of foods that were fairly common back on Earth, but rare here at the Academy. There was a sandwich, a small pack of fruits, a bottle of juice, and a colorful, sugary snack, a little indulgence he always saved for the end of his meal. It was a bright, neon-colored candy bar that was unique to human cuisine, and often caused quite a stir among his alien classmates, who either found it fascinating or were downright repelled by the idea of something so artificially vibrant. The girl continued to stare at her tray, glancing at his food now and then, but quickly averting her eyes whenever he looked at her. Jake could sense her discomfort, her hesitation, but also her underlying curiosity. She was trying to be discreet, but he noticed every little glance she stole at his tray. "What's your name?" he asked, hoping to ease the tension. There was a moment of silence before she answered, her voice soft and melodic, almost like a whisper carried on a breeze. "Zara." "I'm Jake." "Nice to meet you, Zara." He smiled, hoping it would reassure her. "I noticed you sitting here alone. Thought I'd come over and say hi." Zara seemed unsure of how to respond, her fingers still nervously tracing patterns on the edge of her tray. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible. "I don't usually sit with others." Jake nodded, understanding. The Academy, for all its emphasis on unity and diversity, still had its fair share of divisions. Many students preferred the company of their own kind, especially if they came from planets with vastly different customs or biological needs. Some species even had a cultural aversion to mingling with outsiders, viewing it as improper or even dangerous. He could only imagine the challenges Zara faced being here, among so many different beings. "Do you like it here?" he asked, genuinely curious. Zara hesitated again, as if weighing her words. "It's different. My home is quieter, fewer people." Jake nodded, trying to picture it. "Sounds peaceful." She nodded, her eyes softening slightly. "It is." A comfortable silence settled between them as they sat, each focused on their own thoughts. Jake sensed that Zara wasn't one for too much talking, and he respected that. He decided to eat his food, trying to keep his movements calm and non-intrusive. Every now and then, he caught her glancing at his food, her eyes lingering on the bright candy bar. He couldn't help but smile. Finally, he picked up the candy bar and held it out to her. "Would you like to try this?" Zara's eyes widened, her gaze shifting between the candy and Jake's face, as if trying to gauge his intentions. For a moment, he thought she might decline. He didn't want to pressure her, so he added, "It's okay if you don't want to. I just thought you might like it." She seemed to relax at his words, the tension in her shoulders easing just a bit. Slowly, tentatively, she reached out, her slender fingers trembling slightly as she took the candy from him. She examined it closely, her expression one of fascination. Jake watched her with a smile, glad to see her interest piqued. She took a small bite, and her eyes widened even more. The sweet, intense flavor was unlike anything she had ever tasted. For a species that grew up on bland, nutrient-dense food, this was an explosion of sensation. A soft glow began to emanate from her skin, a faint ripple of colors that danced across her face. Jake realized it was a reaction to her emotions, a natural response her body couldn't hide. She looked at him, wonder in her gaze. "It's amazing," she whispered, almost to herself. Jake chuckled. "Glad you like it. It's just a snack, but it's one of my favorites." For the first time, Zara smiled. It was a small, hesitant smile, but it was genuine, and it warmed Jake's heart. In that moment, he realized that this simple act of sharing a snack had opened a door between them, a bridge across the vast differences that separated their worlds. He knew they might never fully understand each other's cultures or customs, but in this small way, they had found common ground. As the lunch period drew to a close, Zara thanked him quietly, still holding the candy as if it were a precious treasure. They parted ways, but as Jake walked back to his next class, he felt lighter, happier. He didn't know what the future held, but he hoped this was the start of something meaningful, a friendship that might just defy the boundaries of species and space. The following day, Zara couldn't stop thinking about the taste of that colorful snack Jake had shared with her. The sweetness, the vibrant flavors, it was unlike anything she'd ever had. In her own culture, food was seen as a necessary fuel, rarely a pleasure. It wasn't that her people didn't enjoy food, but their diets consisted of simple, nutrient-rich gels and small crystalline minerals, foods that served only practical purposes. She had never imagined something like Jake's candy could exist, let alone affect her so deeply. As she sat in class that morning, Zara found herself daydreaming about it, remembering the burst of flavor that had spread through her mouth, and the way her skin had responded, glowing faintly in shades she hadn't seen on herself before. She wondered if Jake would bring another one, and if he'd be willing to share it with her again. The thought was both thrilling and intimidating. She was not used to seeking out interactions, especially with someone from a different species. But something about Jake's warmth and kindness the previous day had touched her in a way she couldn't explain. The Intergalactic Academy was bustling as always, with students moving from one class to another, filling the halls with a cacophony of sounds and languages. Every hallway was alive with holographic displays showing interstellar news, upcoming events, and cultural announcements. The Academy took great pride in celebrating each species' uniqueness, often organizing festivals where students could showcase their homeworld's art, music, and food. Despite the Academy's commitment to unity, Zara often felt isolated, her own culture too quiet and reserved to stand out amidst the louder, more expressive students around her. By lunchtime, Zara had worked up the courage to seek Jake out. She scanned the crowded cafeteria, her eyes darting between tables until she spotted him, sitting with his tray and chatting with a group of friends. She hesitated, a wave of doubt washing over her. Would he even remember her? And if he did, would he be willing to share another snack? Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her own tray, which, as usual, held a simple gel cube. She glanced at it, feeling a twinge of disappointment that contrasted sharply with her newfound curiosity about human food. But Jake spotted her before she could turn away. He lifted a hand in a friendly wave, his smile as warm as she remembered. Encouraged by his welcoming expression, Zara approached his table, her heart pounding. She was unused to being the center of attention, and the curious glances from Jake's friends made her feel exposed. "Hey, Zara." Jake greeted her, his voice cheerful. He gestured to an empty seat beside him. "Want to sit with us?" She hesitated, feeling the weight of the other students' gazes, but then nodded, taking the seat beside him. Jake's friends, a mixed group of species, gave her polite nods. Some seemed genuinely interested, while others quickly returned to their conversations. Jake didn't seem to notice or care about the reactions around him, his focus entirely on Zara. "How's your day going?" he asked, sounding genuinely interested. "It's been fine," she replied, her voice quiet. "Different." She glanced at his tray, her eyes once again drawn to the bright, colorful foods that humans seem to enjoy. Today Jake had a sandwich, a small salad, and another one of those candy bars, the same kind he'd shared with her yesterday. Noticing her gaze, Jake smiled and held out the candy bar. "Would you like another one?" Zara's eyes lit up, and despite herself, she felt a small, delighted smile forming on her lips. She nodded, and Jake handed her the candy. She examined it, almost reverently, before taking a small bite. The explosion of sweetness and color returned, and once again her skin responded, glowing softly in hues that shifted from lavender to blue. Jake's friends noticed, their eyes widening as they watched the subtle changes in her skin. "That's amazing." One of his friends, a tall, spindly creature with emerald green skin, exclaimed. "Does it always do that when you eat?" Zara's cheeks flushed a deeper shade of blue, embarrassed by the attention. "No, only when I eat something." "Intense," she explained quietly. Her people's bodies were highly sensitive to changes in strong flavors, emotions, or sensations often triggered visible reactions. Jake, sensing her discomfort, quickly changed the subject, asking her about her classes and her interests. Zara was grateful for his tactfulness, and as they talked, she found herself relaxing, slowly growing more comfortable around him and his friends. Jake had a way of making her feel seen, understood, even cherished a feeling she had rarely experienced in her life. As their conversation continued, Zara realized that Jake was genuinely curious about her culture, asking questions without judgment, eager to learn about the differences that made her unique. After a while, Jake's friends began drifting away to their next classes, leaving the two of them alone at the table. Zara finished her candy, savoring the lingering sweetness on her tongue. She couldn't help but notice that she felt lighter, happier, her usual anxieties momentarily forgotten. Jake's kindness was like a balm to her often overwhelmed senses, and she found herself wishing their lunch period would last a little longer. "You know, if you ever want to come over for dinner, my family would love to have you," Jake offered, surprising her. Zara's eyes widened. The concept of visiting another's home, especially a human's, was both exciting and daunting. "Dinner? At your home?" she echoed, trying to imagine it. "Yeah, my mom loves cooking, and she's always interested in meeting my friends. I think she'd be really curious about you," Jake said, his smile reassuring. "No pressure, of course. It's just an open invitation if you're ever interested." Zara felt a mix of emotions: gratitude, excitement, and a hint of fear. She had never been to another student's home before, let alone a human's. In her culture, visiting someone's home was a significant gesture, often reserved for close family or friends. But the warmth in Jake's eyes reassured her, and she nodded, feeling a spark of courage. "I'd like that," she replied softly. The bell rang, signaling the end of the lunch period, and they both gathered their trays. As they stood up, Zara looked at Jake, a question forming in her mind. "Jake, why did you come to sit with me yesterday?" Jake paused, as if considering his answer. He gave her a gentle smile, one that spoke of understanding and empathy. "I guess I just felt like you could use a friend. And well, sometimes being different is hard. I figured it might be nice to have someone to talk to." His words touched her deeply, resonating with the loneliness she had often felt but rarely acknowledged. She nodded, unable to find the right words to express her gratitude, and instead simply smiled. They walked together down the hall, parting ways at the intersection leading to their respective classes. As Zara made her way to her next class, her thoughts swirled with anticipation and nervous excitement about Jake's invitation. That night, as she returned to her quarters, she found herself replaying their conversation, the warmth of his words, the kindness in his eyes. She didn't yet know what this new friendship would bring, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of belonging, a feeling that perhaps she was not so alone in this vast, unfamiliar world. The invitation to dinner at Jake's house lingered in Zara's mind over the next few days. The thought of stepping into a human home, experiencing their customs, and sharing a meal with Jake's family filled her with both excitement and nervousness. In her culture, visiting someone's home was a gesture of trust and intimacy reserved for family or close friends. Jake's invitation, though casual by human standards, felt like a significant step for her, an unspoken promise of acceptance. On the evening of the dinner, Zara spent extra time in front of the small reflective panel in her room, adjusting her outfit and smoothing her hair like tendrils, which softly pulsed with a natural luminescence. She wore a simple, flowing garment typical of her people. Its color, a soft shade of silver, was considered respectful and formal. A few of her classmates had raised eyebrows when she told them she was visiting a human family. To them, it was an odd choice, one that didn't fit with their cultural norms. But for Zara, who had always felt like an outsider, the opportunity to connect with Jake's family was both a privilege and an adventure. As she made her way to Jake's neighborhood, a mix of human and alien architecture, she couldn't help but marvel at the blend of cultures displayed in the buildings around her. The buildings were modest by human standards but uniquely adapted to accommodate diverse residents from different planetary backgrounds. Each home had subtle modifications: atmospheric regulators, adaptable seating, and varying gravity zones to ensure comfort for each species. Jake's family lived in a cozy, Earth-inspired house with a touch of futuristic design, smooth, curving walls and solar panels that glowed faintly under the setting sun. Jake greeted her at the front door with an enthusiastic grin, his energy as warm and welcoming as ever. "Hey Zara, come on in." As she stepped inside, Zara was struck by the warmth of the atmosphere. The house smelled of spices she didn't recognize, a subtle mix of sweet and savory scents that made her curious about what was to come. The walls were adorned with photos and decorations, a strange but endearing practice, she thought. She had heard that humans like to surround themselves with memories and sentimental objects, and now she could see the truth in it. Pictures of Jake as a young child, along with images of places and faces she didn't recognize, were scattered around the living room, each one telling a silent story. Jake led her to the dining area, where his parents were busy setting the table. His mother, a kind-looking woman with gentle eyes and a warm smile, turned to greet her. "Hello, Zara. It's so lovely to finally meet you. Jake has told us a lot about you," she said, extending her hand. Zara hesitated for a brief moment before recalling that humans often greeted each other with handshakes. She carefully reached out, her cool, slightly translucent hand meeting the warmth of Jake's mother's. It was an odd sensation, the physical connection unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. "Thank you for having me," Zara replied softly, her voice carrying a hint of nervousness. "It's an honor to be invited into your home." Jake's father, who had been arranging dishes on the table, gave her a friendly nod. "Welcome, Zara. We're happy to have you here. Make yourself at home." They all took their seats around the table, and Zara found herself marveling at the array of foods before her. There were dishes of various colors, textures, and shapes, some familiar from what she had seen in the cafeteria, others entirely foreign. She recognized a bowl of salad with vibrant greens, a dish of roasted vegetables, and what looked like some kind of baked item with a golden crust. But there were also dishes that seemed designed for taste alone, foods that held no real nutritional purpose in her own culture. "Is this all for us?" Zara asked, her voice tinged with awe. Jake's mother chuckled. "Yes. I wanted to prepare a variety of things so you could try a little bit of everything. Jake mentioned you were curious about human food." Zara nodded, her gaze fixed on the colorful spread before her. In her culture, food was seen as a resource, something to be consumed sparingly and with intention. Meals were small and often lacked variety, meant to sustain rather than delight. The idea of preparing so many different dishes simply to enjoy them was novel, almost extravagant. Jake, noticing her hesitation, nudged a bowl closer to her. "Try this," he suggested. "It's called mashed potatoes. It's pretty simple, but really good." Zara took a small spoonful, bringing it cautiously to her lips. The soft, creamy texture melted in her mouth, and she felt a wave of warmth spread through her. It was comfort in a form she had never known, and she found herself taking another bite, savoring the subtle flavor. "This is incredible," she murmured, her skin faintly pulsing with a soft, lavender glow. Encouraged by her reaction, Jake's mother offered her other dishes to try, explaining each one with a warmth and enthusiasm that made Zara feel even more welcome. There was roasted meat with herbs, a dish called stuffing made of bread and spices, and even a sweet, golden liquid called gravy that Jake poured over his food, insisting that she try it too. Each new taste was an adventure, an exploration of flavors and textures she had never encountered. As they ate, Jake's parents began asking her questions, gently and respectfully. They were curious about her home planet, her family, and her experience at the academy. Zara was unaccustomed to such open interest, but she found herself speaking freely, feeling safe in the warmth of their attention. She shared stories of her people's quiet, reserved way of life, their focus on harmony with nature, and their preference for solitude. She explained how her kind rarely spoke in loud voices, preferring soft, melodic tones that blended into their surroundings. Jake's mother listened with fascination. "Your culture sounds so peaceful," she said thoughtfully. "I can see why our world might feel overwhelming to you." Zara nodded, appreciating her understanding. "It is very different. But I am grateful for the opportunity to learn from others. Meeting Jake has helped me feel less alone." The admission surprised even herself, and she glanced shyly at Jake, who smiled, clearly touched by her words. Jake's parents exchanged a look, their expressions warm and approving. In that moment, Zara felt as if she were part of something greater than herself, a small piece of a family, even if just for one evening. As they finished the main course, Jake's mother disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a tray of desserts. Zara's eyes widened as she took in the array of sweet small pastries dusted with sugar, a bowl of colorful fruits, and something Jake called cake, which was adorned with a rich, creamy topping. Dessert was an unknown concept to her people. Food that served no purpose other than enjoyment seemed indulgent, almost foreign. Jake cut her a slice of the cake and handed it to her with a grin. "This is my favorite. You have to try it." Taking a bite, Zara felt a rush of sweetness that made her senses come alive. The texture was soft and airy, and the flavor rich and slightly tangy filled her with a warmth she couldn't quite describe. Her skin glowed brightly, shifting between hues of pink and lavender, and she heard Jake's mother let out a delighted laugh. "That's amazing, Zara. You're like a rainbow," she exclaimed, her voice full of wonder. Zara felt her cheeks flush, embarrassed yet thrilled by their delight. She had never been the center of such positive attention before, and it made her feel cherished in a way she had never experienced. After dinner, they moved to the living room, where Jake's father set up a small device that projected holographic images of Earth's landscapes. Zara watched in awe as scenes of lush forests, vast oceans, and towering mountains filled the room, the vibrant colors and sounds transporting her to a world she had only read about. "This is Earth?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. Jake's father nodded. "Yes, we wanted to share a little bit of our home with you." The images shifted, showing cities filled with lights, bustling markets, and people of all shapes and sizes. Zara marveled at the variety, the energy, the life that seemed to pulse through every scene. Her own world was beautiful, but in a quiet, subdued way. The vibrancy of Earth was something she had never fully understood until now. As the evening came to a close, Zara felt a deep sense of gratitude. Jake's family had shown her a kindness she had never expected, welcoming her into their home and sharing their lives with her. She felt a newfound sense of belonging, a bond that transcended the vast differences between their worlds. When it was time to leave, Jake walked her to the door, a gentle smile on his face. "Thank you for coming, Zara. It was really nice having you here." Zara looked at him, her heart full. "Thank you, Jake, your family. They are very kind. I feel honored to have been here." Jake nodded, understanding the depth of her words. "You're always welcome here, Zara. You're part of the family now." As she stepped out into the night, Zara felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the evening air. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she felt that she had found a place where she truly belonged, a place where she was accepted, understood, and valued. Walking back to her quarters, Zara's mind was filled with memories of the evening, the warmth of Jake's family, the laughter, the delicious food, and the feeling of connection that bridged the gap between their worlds. She knew that this was only the beginning of her journey, a path that would lead her to new friendships, new experiences, and a deeper understanding of herself and those around her. And as she looked up at the stars, twinkling brightly above her, Zara knew that no matter how far she was from home, she was not alone. She had found a family among the stars. Zara's visit to Jake's home had changed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. After that evening, she felt a shift within herself, a new sense of belonging. not just to Jake's family but to something much larger. The warmth, kindness, and open-hearted curiosity she had encountered filled her with a confidence she hadn't known was possible. Her days at the academy became lighter, her once quiet demeanor now carrying a spark of optimism that hadn't been there before. But it wasn't long before their friendship began to draw attention from other students. Some looked on with curiosity, intrigued by the unlikely bond between the human boy and the quiet alien girl with glowing skin. Others, however, weren't as welcoming. Rumors spread, whispers circulated, and the usual divides among the students seemed to deepen. At the Intergalactic Academy, friendships across species were encouraged, yet genuine connections like Jake and Zara's were still rare, sometimes even misunderstood. One day, while Jake and Zara were studying together in the library, an older alien student approached them. He was tall and imposing, with scales that shimmered like metal and a gaze that was as sharp as it was skeptical. Zara recognized him. His name was Lyrax, a senior student known for his intense pride in his heritage and a vocal belief in the superiority of his people. Lyrax looked down at them with an unreadable expression. "I've been hearing things," he said, his voice low and resonant. "Is it true that you're friends with this human, Zara?" Jake looked up, ready to defend their friendship, but Zara spoke first, her tone calm and steady. "Yes, we're friends. Jake has shown me nothing but kindness." Lyrax tilted his head, regarding her with what seemed like disappointment. "Our people value strength, resilience, and independence. Associating with outsiders is seen as a weakness, a distraction from our path." Zara felt a pang of frustration but kept her voice steady. "Kindness isn't weakness, Lyrax. We learn from those who are different. Jake and his family taught me things I could never have understood alone. Isn't that what we're here for?" Lyrax regarded her for a long moment before turning his gaze to Jake. "Human," he said, his tone edged with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. "What do you hope to gain from this friendship? Do you see her as a project? An oddity?" Jake shook his head, meeting Lyrax's gaze without flinching. "I don't see Zara as anything but my friend. I don't care about where she's from or how different she is. I just know that she's kind, smart, and someone I'm grateful to have in my life." Zara felt a surge of gratitude and pride at his words. For the first time, she realized that Jake saw her not as an outsider or a curiosity, but as an equal, a friend. Lyrax seemed taken aback, his sharp gaze softening slightly, though he masked it quickly. He gave a small nod, as if reluctantly acknowledging their bond. "Perhaps there is value in learning from others," he murmured, almost to himself, before walking away. His departure left a silence between them, one filled with unspoken thoughts and shared understanding. Over the following weeks, the whispers around them faded, replaced by a quiet respect from those who had once been skeptical. Jake and Zara's friendship became a small beacon of unity, a subtle but profound reminder that connections could bridge even the widest of divides. Other students began to approach them, some curious, others shy, seeking advice or simply wanting to learn about each other's worlds. Zara found herself opening up in ways she hadn't imagined, her once private life now filled with the warmth and camaraderie of newfound friends. One evening, as she and Jake sat on the Academy's observation deck, watching the stars above them, Zara felt a sense of peace settle within her. The observation deck was one of her favorite places, a vast, open space with transparent walls that offered an unobstructed view of the galaxy. Stars stretched endlessly in every direction, distant suns glowing like embers in the dark, each one representing a world she had yet to see. Jake broke the comfortable silence, his voice soft. "Did you ever think things would turn out like this?" Zara smiled, her gaze still on the stars. "No. When I first came here, I felt so alone. I was afraid I'd never find a place to belong." Jake nodded, understanding. "I get that. When I first saw you sitting alone in the cafeteria, I didn't know if you'd even want to talk to me. But something told me I should try." Zara turned to him, her expression thoughtful. I'm glad you did. You showed me kindness when I needed it most. I'll always be grateful for that. They fell silent again, both of them lost in thought. Zara realized that her friendship with Jake had not only changed her but had also influenced those around them. The academy felt different now, as if a door had been opened, inviting others to embrace connections they might once have feared. As they sat there, Zara reached into her bag and pulled out a small, crystalline object, one of the few items she had brought from home. It was a fragment of a gemstone unique to her planet, a symbol of friendship and trust. She held it out to Jake, her hand steady. In my culture, we give these to those we hold dear, she explained, her voice quiet yet strong. It's a symbol of loyalty and connection. I want you to have it. Jake took the gemstone carefully, studying it in awe. It shimmered in his hand, catching the starlight and reflecting colors he had never seen before. He looked at Zara, his expression filled with gratitude. Thank you, Zara. This means a lot to me. They sat together, the stars watching over them, feeling the weight and beauty of a friendship that had defied the odds, bridging worlds and hearts alike. Zara knew that their journey was only beginning, that there would be challenges and changes ahead. But with Jake by her side, she felt ready to face them, her heart open to the endless possibilities that awaited among the stars. In that moment, Zara realized that she was no longer alone. She had found a family in Jake, a friend who had shown her that true connections could transcend even the vastness of space. And as they watched the stars together, she knew that, no matter where life took them, their bond would endure, a friendship born of kindness, strengthened by trust, and destined to shine like the stars above them.